Thanks for coming. And I think it's one of my favorite researchers that we did at ESET, especially because of the partnership we had, and we're going to see that throughout the presentation with law enforcement. Otherwise, we're just showing problems. We're not taking real actions to make things better at the end of the day. And just before I start, I would like to do some quick housekeeping. First, even though I'm the guy here presenting to you all, that's by far not a single person type of task. It's actually a research that extends for now more than 11 years. So as you can imagine, there was a lot of people involved on it. And then now the team is actually led by Jean Boutin on our research office in Montreal. And but again, through all those years, we have many people participating on that research. Another one is I especially because we are in BSides, even though I would like to really go down the rabbit hole and talk about the little nitty-gritty of the techniques they were using. Again, because we're talking about 10 plus years of this Ebury botnet running, it would be like a lot of zeros and ones to talk about. So I'm trying to do like a technical overview, if you will, but the good part is that we have a white paper that is actually fairly detailed, and then you're gonna find all the technical spiels that we love on that white paper. At the end of the presentation, you're gonna have my contact information. I did that on BSides Calgary. And other BSides, I'll just send you the information. More than happy to share that. That's why we do this, to share information. On the same note, no need for photos. You can take it, but no need because I can share every single detail you're gonna see here with more details on that white paper. And last but not the least, Q&A at the end as well. I'll try my best to speed run that because I love Q&A, so we can ask a lot of questions. And okay, I think we can get going. By the way, about acknowledgements on that white paper, you're gonna have everybody who participated on that research throughout those years. And you're gonna see it's a lot of people. It's not Lord of the Rings credit, but it's getting there. And one thing that would be very important to understand how we were able to run that research throughout those years with the amount of visibility that we had, it's related to the company itself. Anybody here heard of ESET before? Just sanity checking, 30%, which is fair. We don't do a lot of marketing stuff. So just to understand again how we were able to track that threat specifically, ESET's mostly known in Europe, where if we combine the partnerships we have, I'm gonna fly by through this just to give you the backdrop. If we combine the partnerships we have with Intel and Google, we collect telemetry from more than 1 billion devices across the globe. You name it, all sorts of devices. And again, it's all related to the telemetry and the knowledge we use to extract meaningful information out of it. From those 1 billion, direct customers, B2B customers, and then we start getting on the more interesting part, because those are usually the entities using, I'm trying to be confined here because of the camera they asked me, but it's giving me the creeps a little bit. Oh, okay. So that's the amount of B2B customers, and again, those guys will have the juicy part for those criminal actors. And again, enterprises, they also are heavy users of Linux boxes, internet facing. So all that telemetry go to our research centers across the globe. Of course, as I mentioned, one in Montreal. And we, again, not only with the volume, but different types of telemetry, we start putting those pieces together to do researches like the one I'm presenting now. Like I mentioned, everything started more than 11 years ago with, at that time, called Operation Windigo, where we actually brought the first details of that first seen large-scale botnet for Linux boxes. And then we published a lot of things, a lot of details on that Operation Windigo. We were hoping that disclosure would actually make it really hard for them to keep that botnet alive, but it was not necessarily what happened. And just to also level set a little bit, even though it's going to be more like a technical overview, is everybody here familiar with SSH? No, it's okay, fair enough. Yeah, so I'm going to fly through this as well. Basically, you log in your remote Linux boxes. We don't use graphic interface. We don't need that. So that's the main way we interact with those boxes. But then comes Ebury, which was, again, 11 years ago, one of the first massive scale botnets we were able to track. And they were just exploiting something on the open SSH application, which is the most common way, or the most common application. Linux boxes come out of the box with that application on it. So they were able to find a backdoor on the open SSH application that was basically meant to, whenever the real admin of that box logged with their credentials immediately got exfiltrated to the Ebury network. So they were able to leverage that to after make use of those boxes. But which was really interesting, they started leveraging, and they were really good on using, if I can put this way, industry standards. They didn't try to reinvent some of the wheels. They were just really good on this exploit with on the open SSH application, but they didn't try to invent every piece of the equation. They were just leveraging best practices from other, you name it, threat actor, criminals, and so on. So they actually started using userland rootkit to not only hide files on the operating system, which of course is an obfuscation technique, kind of common, and nowadays I hear a little bit feedback. It's something I can do to get it better, or is it okay? Okay. But they were also able to run the resource they were utilizing to run their malware application on those systems. So that made really stealthy and really complicated to companies to detect that. And they were just not interested in locking down those systems. They were trying to get as many systems compromised as possible and use those systems to do whatever activities they were planning to do. So then, as I mentioned, we released Operation Windigo about 10 years ago. We published a lot of details. And whenever any cybersecurity research or company, they publish those things in theory, you're going to get, of course, the bad guys also aware of that. And the idea is that everybody will be able to protect themselves against those known ways they try to exploit systems, but that's the desired scenario. But not only, it's not always the reality that we see. So at that point, during Operation Windigo, the Ebury was basically leveraging 3 monetization techniques for their operations. One was web traffic redirection. Again, not trying to reinvent the wheel. They leverage a known malware called the family of malware called CDOR. And the other monetization technique was spam campaigns, and that's if you guys, again, I can dive a little bit on it if you're not familiar, but it's basically a good way to avoid spam filters. So they were leveraging the good reputation IP addresses from those boxes, and from there, doing spam campaigns, likely phishing campaigns, using those boxes. And the third way was utilizing that as like a massive distributed data center, like a lot of infrastructure available to do whatever you could do with a normal infrastructure, DNS servers, web servers, so on and so forth. So again, we released that to the public. in theory, is going to help disrupt their operation, or in some cases, they are well organized or organized enough to actually keep, like as a normal company, releasing new versions of their malware. And that was what happened. They released version 1.4.1. And crazy enough, they mentioned ESET on their new version because of the hard work we gave them after we released the way they were exploiting those boxes. That mixed feelings with proud and holy cow. But again, they released that new version, and we kept track of them. So if we, and then we started. How can I put this? There was one particular, and so those big operations, it's sometimes, I don't want to say common, but it happens more often than not. We were able to pinpoint to an individual that was leveraging the botnet, and we kept track after he kind of made this mistake. We kept track of that individual. And we were in communication with law enforcement in Europe. And when he stepped out of Russia, like crossing the border to Finland, it was like super fast for the law enforcement to arrest that person. That was December 2015. And then the person was actually wanted in the United States. So in the beginning of 2016, they sent that person to the United States to face trial. At that point, he was pleading not guilty over and over. So we had, and that's the not fun part for technical guys, we had to explain to prosecutor, judge, how we could track all the technicalities of that botnet and how we were able to pinpoint that to that particular individual that was on trial. And it's always, if you try to explain, what you do for a living, for your family, it's that kind of conversation, right? So it's always interesting. I don't judge. I'm not sure what happened, but the guy got into the prison in Minneapolis, if I'm not mistaken. And at some point, he decided to plead guilty after 1 year being in prison. So I'm not sure what happened there, but I don't judge. So I'm okay. Whatever happened, he decided to stay in Minneapolis, basically. So he got the forced green card and is living in the U.S. now. So that happened, but we had like a fair amount of reasons to think he was now like the head of the Ebury operation. So we kept track of the botnet. We were seeing if there was any new activities. And coincidentally or not, in 2017, one of our honeypots actually, and so the honeypots, we were basically exfiltrating the credentials to our honeypots, in the same ways Ebury used to buy their credentials from InfoStealers or other type of threat actors. So we were kind of exfiltrating that way in hopes that they would use that to log into our honeypots. But in this time particularly, they found it was actually one of our honeypots. So they logged out and we were not hearing from them for a few years. Fast forward that to 2021. And then another law enforcement reached out of the blue to us, saying that they found a victim of cryptocurrency theft related to Ebury. And then if you remember the three main techniques they were using to monetize the botnet, it was web traffic redirection, spam campaigns, and infrastructure hosting kind of thing for other actors. But never we heard they were using cryptocurrency. So we were like, oh yes, let's collaborate and partner here to see what we can come with that information. I'm gonna park here for a second, and that's the really pinpoint of that pinnacle of those 10 years of research when they reached out to us, because they were able to do something no private company would be able to do. They seized assets. So they actually gave us like servers, physical servers, they were able to seize on their side of the operation. And that's the important part. Like no private company will have all the pieces of the puzzle alone. No public entity will have all the pieces of the puzzle alone. If we don't like combine those knowledges, there's no way we can build the big picture, or the most complete possible picture is the best way to put it. So it was insanely valuable when they shared that information with us. The flip side, if you can imagine like a server running from an operation like 10 years old, they had a massive amount of data. So it was a lot of work to make sense of that information. They have like full list of their targets, phone numbers, email addresses, how many times they reach out to do double, triple extortion, you name it. So it was like a very organized entity behind that. So it was, a lot of work to make sense of all. Not everything was like just technical information like hashes or IP addresses and so on. So we had to really understand the information we had at hand. So it took us 2.5-ish years. And then last year we published the last big iteration of the Ebury research, where actually before that server seized, shared with us, we were talking about throughout those years, approximately 40,000 Linux compromised across those years, but the number was, with that server, was actually like 10 times larger. But again, not everybody will have a single picture with all the information in it. And we thought Ebury was running for 11 years at that point. But again, after we started collaborating with the Dutch cybercrime unit, we saw like first compromises dating back to 15 years actually. So it was way longer than that. One thing called our attention, especially analyzing that data. We were tracking that because it was so large by the month, not for like years because it would be massive. But we know that we had to create another scale to actually track some months that had really big spikes. And then we went back to the, to the logs, to the data, and we realized they were actually now utilizing not only credential simple, quote unquote, simple vulnerability on the OpenSSH application to steal credentials. They actually had now 4 different methodologies to take control of Linux boxes. And again, on that white paper, there's detailed information of every single methodology they are using currently. And they also changed their more one-on-one basis type of attacks. And that was the reason we saw those spikes. We find out they were basically compromising data centers, hosting providers. So what we did was we wanted to test that theory. We rented a box, like a raw Linux box, just had OpenSSH on it. We will let it run on we thought it was one of the compromised data centers. And we let it there, sitting there to see how long it would take to get Ebury on it, or if you want to get Ebury on it. So it took only 7 days to have the machine compromised. And of course, it's always that mouse and cat game. We were able to up our honeypot game. So we actually made a really good honeypot because we could track Ebury connections across their distributed botnet every single day. So it was, again, a way we kept the eye on those connections, not locally anymore like we used to do in the past, because they were also prolific in recognizing our botnets. So we were kind of a attacker in the middle technique, but for botnet purposes, honeypot purposes. At that point, they changed, like I mentioned, their monetization techniques. They were now stealing credit card information and not trying to reinvent the wheel as well. They were just doing their first foothold on the systems and leveraging existing malware. Two families of malware in this case, Elimot Steel and Freeze Steel, to get the credit card information out of those compromised boxes. Traffic redirection and spam was still a thing. They're still leveraging that. And like you hopefully you remember, cryptocurrency that we got first to know with the Dutch cybercrime unit. And that was very interesting from a especially cryptocurrency standpoint. They were so big from a distribution standpoint. They actually, we saw in the internal documentation they had on that server. They actually came up with a crazy assumption. If you guys are familiar with cryptocurrency, they have to have public facing nodes to be able to do the transactions. And you have to publish those nodes. So they came up with that assumption that, I'm behaving well here, you see? Yeah, the assumption that they would likely have Ebury compromised machines on the same subnet of those public nodes. So they started testing that. And they actually found quite a lot of nodes that were actually on the same subnet as they were on those either data centers or other completely compromised or partially compromised data centers. And what they did was, and that's probably the part that kind of boggles me, if you guys heard of or know it, they were doing simply ARP spoofing. And that's like a older than me technique kind of thing, and worked. And then now you're connecting to your, right? Yeah. And the crazy part's that there's just a vast amount of documentation how to prevent ARP spoofing. Right? So it's almost negligence. You don't have that enabled on any almost old switches nowadays or whatever. You can do that. Either way, so they're basically, you think you're logging on your crypto wallet, you're actually being, because of their spoofing now, logging into the Ebury compromised machine. And they had a simple, from an attack standpoint, technique. So you log there, your wallet gets exfiltrated right away. So, and that was the case with that investigation from the Dutch cybercrime unit. So, and that we also found they were using attacker in the middle technique, and then not for honeypot purposes, but to collect a large amount of SSA host keys. And it was interesting because they got a little lazy-ish. They started replacing the host keys by a unique host key to make their life easier. But if you know, when you first log into a server, the keys don't know each other, you're gonna have a prompt, or if somebody changes the host key, and then you're gonna have this prompt as well. If you are the admin of that box and you know you logged there before and you get the alert, this alert, what do? That's what people do. Hit yes, move on because your service is down or you have to patch something. People just move on. Nobody, the vast majority, I would say, just hit yes and do whatever they want to do and life goes on, right? So that became a really big part of the Ebury methodology to get their operations running. And but on the flip side, because they're using for the most part one single host key, now we can use our beloved Showdown, for example, to track those host keys. So we started doing that to find Ebury compromised machines, even if we didn't have that on our telemetry. So we could actually go for a hunt of those guys. Currently, we see primarily Ebury using still spam. Apparently it's fairly lucrative, or a lot of profits coming from it. Web traffic redirection. cryptocurrency was probably a more pointed type of operation. They are not so big on it, and they're at least not focused on it from our perspective, as far as we know. But one of the most damaging things they're doing nowadays is exfiltration of post requests. If everybody familiar-ish with post requests, web forms, you name it, like insurance, you go there, oh, I want a quote, and you type your life on it, and they get exfiltrated too. So they start also monetizing that, selling to our, what we know as like info stealers, those guys handling all the, or most of the compromised information on the dark web. And another interesting thing we noticed recently with Ebury, because of their very large presence, they started bumping to other actors, malware, and they didn't want that. They want to have like full control of those boxes, not anybody else. And we started seeing on those, on the scripts they were running, on the pieces of malware we were able to collect, that they were looking for their main quote-unquote competitors, in this case, Big Bad Wolf. And they actually had scripts like to really find on those boxes they were operating if Big Bad Wolf was also trying to get a backdoor on those boxes. This is just, simple demonstration of that one I was mentioning to you of the post request exfiltration. So you try to connect to whatever legitimate website. Actually, you get redirected to the Ebury server. Your information will go through. You're going to process your payment. You're going to receive the quote from your insurance company so you don't suspect something's wrong. But all your information got exfiltrated to those guys. Kind of coming to an end, so we're going to have some time to Q&A. Because of the whole operation, including the information we got from the partnership with the Dutch Cybercrime Unit, we published some detection tools. They're going to be on that white paper as well, and some remediations for it. Believe it or not, one of the main things we could do to prevent Ebury are also open source, zero cost. Some of the conclusions we had across, analyzing their activities for so many years is that, and I do recommend, there's absolutely, and that's sometimes it's almost like a roadblock for victims. There's absolutely no shame if you got a Linux box compromised with Ebury. Even super tech-savvy victims got compromised with it. It's just the nature of our industry. You cannot see everything, patch everything. It just happened. Best way to prevent that, MFA. Have anybody here set up MFA on CLI? It's beautiful. Right? It's like, imagine the CLI spitting out like a QR code. It's horrible, but it works. It works. And again, open source, Google has one. It's on the white paper as well. And then you name it, if you have the ability to do both even better, have EDR on your Linux boxes. Doesn't matter which, but pay attention on things running there, behavior of the box. Again, they started super stealthy, but some of the other things they were running on those boxes could trigger EDR detections. Even if your EDR doesn't catch the obfuscation techniques Ebury itself was using, but then when they install other malware, Elimot steal, Freeze steal, so on and so forth, then you can catch those and then investigations will kick in. Hopefully you're gonna see somebody will do like a root cause analysis and they will catch the whole thing happening on that box. Monitor your Linux boxes. And this is my contact information. The QR code doesn't have Ebury on it, it's just my LinkedIn profile. If you wanna send me either a message on LinkedIn or my email's over there as well, I'll send you the white paper. And with that, thank you. we have, thank you.